Okay, so it looks like maybe we can keep discussing later on, but I would now continue with the presentation of Martina. So maybe first for those that joined later after the introduction. So Martina is an earth scientist. She comes from the Czech Republic, but now she's working at ETH Zurich as a Marie Curie Fellow. And she's studying she's focusing, her subject is how the interior of Earth works and how that affects how the surface of Earth behaves, and some exciting topics like the generation of tsunamis. But she's also very active in public engagement, and the topic of gender equality is also quite her topic, and she will talk mainly about her project, Did This Really Happen? So Martina, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Marketa, for a nice introduction. So I will share my screen. Hopefully you will see. Actually, yeah, it was a very nice introduction by Jess, and I'm going to, to talk more about some stereotypes that we find in academia. When I was at high school, so this is something like 1995, 1998, my classmates, they were saying to me something like, you're a smart girl, but you are not really a woman or a girl. This was because I was really good at math and at physics. So these are subjects that girls are traditionally not good at. At the time, I was rather flattered. I didn't see any problem in these kind of remarks. Today, I see it differently. So if you look at, this is few years back, so we are at 2018. I was at a scientific conference and I heard things something like, it's normal that men are aggressive during discussions because they have more testosterone. Or women are doing great these days. It's way easier for them nowadays. And I couldn't believe it. So it's 2018 and I can hear this. And I think that such kind of sexist remarks, or I call it microaggressions or ordinary sexism, is one of the reasons of underrepresentation of women in science. And this is the core of our project that we started. It's called Did This Really Happen? And there is 7 researchers associated in this project. And basically we promote, we fight sexism and we promote gender equality. And first I'm going to show you what's the history of the project. And then we recently published a new paper on the project. So basically I will show you the results of this paper. So first, what we do, so we collect testimonies on sexist behavior, similar stories like I showed you before. We turn them into comics and we publish them anonymously without any judgment on our web page. How it all started. So this was in 2014. There was a male PI, primary investigator, and he got ERC grant funded by the European Union. And he actually, for this grant, for no particular reason, he hired 6 women. And at this stage, what happened actually, that he got a lot of sexist remarks because he was hiring women. So no one was looking at our competencies. We were judged by our gender. So we did not like that, of course. So what happened is that we started to discuss about it within the team first. So this was in 2015, 16, 17, and the informal discussions turned into regular meetings. And the turn point for this was when we started to work with a sociologist, Philippe Lyotard and Chloé Schweyer. So this was in Lyon, and Philippe Lyotard and Chloé Schweyer, they are from the Gender Diversity and Equality Office in Lyon. And they helped us to reflect on our experiences and channeled our experiences into the current form of the project, and that's releasing comics with Ordinary Sexism. So the first comics was released in 2017, and it was reflecting our experiences. But we developed the project into a website actually, and started to collect all these ordinary sexism examples through our website. So this is in 2018, because when we started to talk about it, the response of the community was enormous. They were encouraging us, and they were also saying things like, oh, this happened to me as well. So we decided to start collecting these testimonies, and right now we collected over 100 of testimonies. We managed to publish in a form of comics about 30 of them. And very recently, our new peer-reviewed paper that is analyzing these collected testimonies is out, is in open access, so you can download it. I will give you the references later. So what we saw in these collected testimonies, because there were some recurrent patterns. And the first thing that came out is that the competencies of female researchers are often questioned. So here's an example. There's a young scientist standing in front of her poster, and a male scientist comes and asks her if she could explain her the comics, and she starts to explain it, but then she interrupts her and asks her and tell her, no, this is, and he starts to explain her poster. And then some other guy is joining the discussion, and he starts to explain him the poster of the female researcher. So at the end, she's actually standing next to her own poster, and two people are discussing about her work. So this falls into the category when, this is an example when women are less listened to and also more interrupted. Here's another example. So this is during a scientific conference, a young scientist comes to an older white male professor, and he says, hi, I just wanted to introduce myself. And he says, are you a student? Who is your supervisor? No, I'm the editor who is handling our paper. Oh, but you are a young girl. Sure, see you around. So this shows that the female researchers are automatically assumed to be early career researchers. And I defended my PhD in 2012. And still today, I get questions like, are you a PhD student? Oh, yeah, no. So the second category is that women tend to be rooted in their traditional roles, like in this beautiful advertisement from the 60s or 70s. You mean a woman can open a bottle of ketchup? So an example of comics is that people are in a meeting room, and there is one female scientist and the rest is our male scientists. And someone is asking, shall we start? Who is taking notes? Of course, the woman scientist will take the note, because the traditional role of women is to be a secretary rather than an equally positioned researcher. There's another example. Young scientist, she is freshly mother, and she went to her office to check on how things are going, and she found out that her place was replaced by a printer. And the male colleague is saying, have you noticed, we now use your place for a printer? Yeah, that's something where female is supposed to be at home with her child, so pointing towards motherhood and the traditional role, how female are perceived are as mothers. Also, like attributes like gossiping or cat fights or being bossy for female researchers are used more often than for male colleagues. So this is for women, and then how males are perceived. What are the traditional roles of males? And of course, these are depicted as strong individuals. And here's an example of a meeting, and someone is asking, do you have any news from him? I heard he changed laboratory. Oh yes, he had to because his wife got promoted, so he does not get much to say at home anymore. And everyone is laughing except of the female researcher. So the men are traditionally perceived as provider, and it's something stigmatizing to not be the one that decides things in a family, because a woman should not have a career. Another example is that, so this is our PI and in Lyon at the time, and so he's working with a team of 6 female researchers, and when he went to the conferences, he got comments something like, did you come with your harem? Or, I'm jealous, you are in office with 4 girls. Or, hi Charlie, are your angels around? So men as a womanizer is another characteristics that we retrieved from the received testimonies. So traditional roles for male scientists are then leaders or primary investigators. The next category that we retrieved from the testimonies is that women are often, it happens often that women are outside of the networking context. And this is something that is known, because men, they are way better in networking. And so this is something that we saw in the testimonies as well. Here's an example of a new manager that comes into an office. He says, hello, how are you doing today? I'm Max, your new senior manager working just next door. You have nice headphones. That's a remark that he gives her female colleague, while for the male colleague, he engages into a conversation. I'm Max, your new manager. What is your expertise? I analyze seismic profiles. Great. Did you work on that during your PhD? When did you defend it? And so the female worker is put outside of the conversation. And here's another example. It's when a woman is giving milk during the conferences, she needs to pump. So and there are like no decent rooms for that. So it happens that she is in the toilet or in the storage room. Again, she is outside of the community where she should be. And the next category is objectification of women, when a female body is perceived primarily compared to her experiences. So this is an example of a professor giving advices to his student. Congratulations on being accepted in this world-class PhD program. As your master advisor, let me give you a few advice. You need to improve your English. You should stop being shy. You have to discuss more. You have to be more competitive. You have to be better organized. Anything positive you could say to me? Well, you are a sympathetic, good-looking young woman. And the last category is modern sexism and no-sexism. So it turns out that universities and institutions, they acknowledge that there is a problem. And in earth sciences, there is about 50% of female PhD students, while at the professor level, there's about 30% of female professors. So the universities, they know that there's a problem, and sometimes they put measures in order to improve the situation. And in particular, for example, quota that are discussable whether they are good or not. But these measures are as a result that the community thinks that, for example, when a young student is awarded, her competencies for the award are questioned. You know why you won the award? That's because they had to fill a female quota. So although there are no quotas for female students to get this award, the peers, they think that she got awarded because of that. All right. So these are like the basic 6 categories that we retrieved from the testimonies that we collected. It's not, well, one comic can fill into the several categories, and we also acknowledge that we are biased primarily because from where we come. The stories were collected mainly from earth science community or planetology community, but we are slowly growing and reaching another communities, community of like industry or applied sciences. So what I want you to encourage is that if you have some kind of this experience of ordinary sexism or something that should not, or microaggression, something that should not be in the working environments, you can share your experience with us through this webpage. It's called thisreallyhappened.net. And here's an advertisement for our paper. So it's published in Advances on Geosciences. And yeah, we give it's interesting reading, give some more details on the statistics. And I would also love to acknowledge our artist, Alice Adenis. She's drawing all the comics by hand, and so you can visit her blog. So this is about the project. But then what I want to argue here as well is that the stereotypes that we identified in the academic community, you can see it through the society on many different levels. And I picked an example of the top politicians. So when you look at the statistics of the speech of Hillary Clinton and the current president of United States, she was interrupted way more, and also I mean, and also she took less time on the shows, for example. When you look at when I was watching the first meeting of the newly elected Slovak president Zuzana Čaputová, discussing with the current Czech president Miloš Zeman, he was making comments on her appearance, something that from my perspective is unacceptable at this level. And the third example I put is Greta Thunberg, and people are giving her such a hard time because she's only a little girl. So we discussed at the end of Just Wait talk, we discussed briefly what could we do to improve the situation. From my perspective, what is the first step to do is to be aware of the problem. This is really crucial to make a step further and improve the situation. And it's not only that women should be, fighting for equality. We need men community to change things. That's why also I was happy that when I look at your meeting, I mean, maybe it's not half-half, but there's quite a lot of men that that I find very positive. And second point is that I want to make is that diversity is the key to success. It has been proven that diverse environment, societies with a diverse environment, they perform way better than compared to the case when you have only men. So diversity is the key to change things. And people should realize that. So hopefully someday we will reach the gender equality. Thanks.
Thank you for giving the talk and introducing the initiative.